chắn có nhầm lẫn gì đó.
Giơ tay ra.
Xin đừng. Xin đừng.
Xong rồi. Đi thôi.
Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today, Toan's story takes a dramatic turn. After the two criminals were arrested, the full truth behind the setup slowly began to come to light. But what shocked everyone most was the name mentioned in their confession: a powerful woman, a mother, and possibly the one behind it all. At the police station, Toan is invited in to retrieve his belongings, his phone, his bank card. Small things it may seem, but they hold his entire future. Yet behind this simple handover lies a much bigger question. Will he press charges against his own mother? Or will he choose to forgive her? When Toan comes face to face with Officer Thu, the silence in the room is suffocating. A decision is made, one that won't just affect the law, but could redefine family itself. Will Toan be strong enough to choose justice? Or will he choose loyalty and let everything go? Today's episode will take you from one surprise to the next. And trust me, the ending will leave you thinking long after it's over. If you enjoy emotional, intense stories with unpredictable twists like this, don't forget to hit like to support us and subscribe so you won't miss what happens next with Toan and lytudiem. Now let's step into the story, where the truth finally begins to unfold. The morning at the police station began with pale light filtering through the high windows, casting long streaks across the cold tile floor. The air still carried the smell of coffee and freshly printed paperwork. The hallway was quiet, broken only by the steady echo of footsteps as officers started their shift. Inside the interrogation room, the early sunlight did nothing to ease the tension. The metal table in the center reflected a harsh white glare. On it lay a thick case file, a recorder already running its red light, blinking steadily like the heartbeat of the room. The two suspects sat across from the officers, their faces pale after a sleepless night. Their eyes were tired dark circles clear in the daylight. Their hands rested on the table, trembling slightly, no longer showing the defiance they had when they were first arrested. The door opened softly but firmly. Officer Thu stepped in, followed by a young officer carrying a stack of documents and a carefully sealed evidence bag. Sunlight slanted over their shoulders, creating a sharp contrast between the light and the truth that was about to come out. Crime scene photos were laid out on the table, signs of a struggle, tire tracks left in the damp ground the night the incident happened, phone data extraction reports, call logs, everything arranged neatly without a single unnecessary detail. A phone was placed in front of the two men. Even cleaned and sealed, it seemed to carry the weight of the truth. The printed data report lay beside it, every number, every timestamp, clearly visible under the morning light. There was no need to raise voices. The silence of the morning was more intimidating than any shout. Officer Thu flipped through the file page by page, pointing out matching timelines, suspicious transfers, each contact with the woman behind the plan. His gaze was sharp, but calm, like someone used to peeling back layers of deception. One of the suspects swallowed hard, his throat dry. The other tried to stay composed, but his shoulders had begun to slump. In the clear morning light, every expression was exposed. There was no darkness left to hide in. The recorder captured every heavy breath, every long pause, every small movement of hands gripping tightly together. Their earlier confidence faded with each piece of evidence presented. Out in the hallway, a phone rang and then stopped. Papers shuffled. The station had fully settled into the rhythm of a new day. And in this room, a piece of the truth was becoming clearer than ever. Finally, the resistance broke. A lowered gaze, a heavy sigh. Statements began to be written into the official record word by word under the bright morning light. The interrogation room door opened. The two suspects were escorted out their steps, slow and heavy. The hallway was brighter now as the sun rose higher. But for them, the new day began on a different path, one that led to trial. The case file was still open, its pages filled with statements and evidence neatly clipped together. Beside it sat the old phone carefully sealed in an evidence bag, along with the bank card and the official property return report. Officer Thu sat quietly for a few seconds, his expression thoughtful. The case was beginning to come together. The two suspects were in temporary custody, but there was still one important step left. He reached for the desk phone and dialed Thu, the only person who could quickly get in touch with Toan right now. The call was brief and direct. Thu informed her that the stolen property had been recovered and asked her to pass along the message for Toan to come to the station to retrieve his phone and bank card. He stressed the urgency of confirming everything and completing the return procedure. When he hung up, his expression remained serious. This wasn't just about returning belongings. It was about closing a chapter of the hardship Toan had endured. Scene change. At Toan's small house, the morning was calm. The wind moved softly through the leaves, sunlight slanting across the yard, still damp with early dew. Toan was in the back halfway through setting up a trellis for bottle gourds. Wooden posts were already in place, cement and sand stacked neatly in one corner. It was simple, but it showed his determination to start over. Quick footsteps sounded at the gate. Toan paused and turned toward the front yard. Toan appeared slightly out of breath, her eyes scanning for him. Her sudden arrival in the middle of the quiet morning caught him off guard. He walked out to meet her, several thoughts flashing through his mind. She didn't usually come by at this hour. Her face carried urgency, but not panic, as if she were holding important news. She quickly delivered the message. Thu was tied up and couldn't come in person, so she had asked Toan to pass it along. Officer Thu wanted Toan to come to the station to retrieve the property recovered from the two suspects. His phone, his bank card, the things he had thought were gone were now found. For a moment, Toan stood still. His expression shifted from surprise to quiet emotion. The phone wasn't just a device, it held data, memories, important contacts for rebuilding his life. The bank card was proof that he hadn't lost everything. He nodded gently, gratitude clear in his eyes. Toan's appearance may have been unexpected, but the news she brought felt like a ray of light after days of turmoil. Without hesitation, Toan went inside to change his shirt. He rinsed his hands, adjusted his clothes, his gaze growing more steady. On the table, his helmet rested neatly. He picked it up and took a deep breath. Outside, the morning sun was bright. A new day was unfolding, but this time, Toan was no longer passive. He was heading to the police station not as a shaken victim, but as someone ready to face things and reclaim what was his. The gate closed behind him. The engine started, and he rode down the sunlit village road. Ahead of him, a new chapter was waiting to begin. Officer Thu was already waiting in his office. On the desk lay a thick case file and a tray of carefully sealed evidence. When Toan walked in, their eyes met, no longer tense, like in the early days, but calm after a long and complicated investigation. After a brief greeting, Thu got straight to the point. The two suspects had been arrested and placed in temporary detention. Their statements matched the evidence collected. Part of Toan's property had been recovered. Not everything, but the most important items were back. The phone was placed in front of him. It was just an everyday object, but the moment he saw it, Toan fell silent for a few seconds. It wasn't just a device, it held work data, relationships, unfinished plans. Next to it was his bank card, proof that he hadn't completely lost control of his life. But the situation didn't end there. Officer Thu brought up the issue involving his mother. This was the real turning point. Toan's decision could steer the case in a different direction. The room grew quieter. The sounds outside seemed to fade away. Toan didn't avoid it. He admitted he had his suspicions. But he also reminded them that she was the woman who had raised him, fed him, paid for his education, and helped him grow up. Even if she had made mistakes, he didn't want to push things further with her. As for the two men who directly harmed him, the law needed to deal with them strictly. But when it came to his mother, he chose to hold on to a sense of family loyalty. Thu listened without interrupting. He emphasized that the investigation would continue to clarify all connections. If any serious violations were found, the law could not ignore them. But at this stage, Toan's opinion would be taken into consideration. The atmosphere eased as the property return report was placed on the desk. Toan picked up his phone and tried to unlock it. The screen lit up. A small moment, but enough to let him breathe a little easier. The important data was still intact. The watch hadn't been recovered, but to him, that no longer mattered. The most essential things were back. Toan signed the document. His handwriting was firm and clear. It wasn't just a confirmation of receiving his property. It felt like a mark closing the chapter of being powerless and hurt. He stood up and sincerely thanked Thu and the officers in the unit. The two dangerous suspects had been arrested in time, preventing possible harm to others. As Toan left the office, Officer Thu turned to instruct his team to complete the paperwork and prepared to transfer the case to the prosecutor's office. Everything had to be done quickly and accurately. Outside, the midday sun was high in the sky. Toan stepped down from the police station with a completely different mindset than when he arrived. He hadn't just recovered his belongings, he had regained part of his control over his life. And from that moment on, his journey to rebuild truly began, no longer as a victim, but as someone choosing to move forward. The sun was already leaning west when Toan left the police station and rode slowly along the familiar road leading back to the village. The air felt warmer now, carrying the dry scent of dust and late afternoon light. Motorbikes passed him from time to time, and the distant sound of vendors calling out drifted through the open space between houses. His mind replayed everything that had happened inside the station. The file on the desk, the sealed evidence bag, the steady voice of Officer Thu, and most of all, the moment his phone screen lit up in his hand. It had felt small, almost ordinary, but to him it was something solid to hold on to again. As he turned onto the narrower road that led toward his home, he noticed a familiar figure walking ahead on the right side. A slim silhouette under the sunlight, her long hair tied back, one hand shielding her eyes from the glare. Even from a distance, he recognized her immediately. Lytudiem. She seemed to be returning from the market, a light cloth bag hanging from her arm. The afternoon light traced a soft outline around her shoulders. For a brief second, Toan simply watched her slowing the bike without realizing it. He pulled up beside her and stopped. She turned at the sound of the engine, and her eyes widened slightly when she saw him. "You're back already?" she asked, her voice carrying both curiosity and quiet concern. Toan removed his helmet and nodded. "Yeah, I just left the station." Her expression shifted instantly. "How did it go?" There was a pause, not heavy, but meaningful. He got off the bike and walked it alongside her so they could continue toward home together. The road was calm, only the hum of insects in the grass and the distant bark of a dog breaking the silence. "It's over," he said finally. "They arrested both of them. They're in custody now." Lytudiem exhaled slowly, as if she had been holding her breath for days. "That's good," she said softly. "Really good." He glanced at her and then continued. "They recovered my phone and my bank card. Most of what mattered." She stopped walking for a second. "You got them back." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the phone, holding it up slightly with a faint smile. "Yeah, it still works. Everything's still there." For a moment, her eyes shimmered with relief. She didn't say anything right away, but the way she looked at him made it clear she understood what that meant. It wasn't about the object itself. It was about stability, about not having to start from absolute zero. "I'm really happy for you," she said quietly. They resumed walking. The late sunlight cast long shadows in front of them, their steps falling into a natural rhythm. "To be honest," Toan continued when I saw it on the table, "I didn't think I'd feel that much, but I did. It felt like I got a piece of my life back." Lytudiem nodded. "Because you did." He gave a small, thoughtful smile. "The watch is still missing. They couldn't recover that." She looked at him carefully. "Does that bother you?" He shook his head. "Not anymore. I realized today that the important things weren't what I thought they were. The phone had my work contacts, my plans. The bank card meant I still had something left to build on. That's enough." They walked in silence for a few steps. The village road curved gently ahead, bordered by low fences and scattered trees. Somewhere nearby, children were laughing. "There's something else," Toan said, his tone shifting slightly. She looked at him again, sensing the change. "Officer Thu brought up my mom." The words settled between them. Lytudiem didn't interrupt. She simply waited. They're still investigating her connection to everything he explained. Right now, there's no direct charge against her. But my decision matters. If I push for it, the case could go further. "And what did you say?" she asked gently. He let out a slow breath. "I told them the law should deal with the two men strictly. No exceptions. But when it comes to my mother..." He hesitated. "I said I didn't want to escalate things." They had reached a stretch of road shaded by tall trees. The sunlight flickered across their faces as leaves swayed above. "I don't know if that makes me weak," he added. Lytudiem stopped walking and turned to face him fully. "It doesn't." He searched her face as if looking for doubt. "She raised you," she said calmly. "Whatever mistakes she made, that part of your history doesn't disappear. Choosing not to destroy that relationship isn't weakness. It's complicated. And it's human." He looked down briefly at the ground, then back at her. "I still feel angry sometimes, and confused. I don't know how to face her yet." "You don't have to decide everything at once," she replied. "You handled today. That's already a lot." They began walking again, slower now. "Toan," she said after a moment, What matters is what you do next. Not just about your mom, about your life. He nodded, and something in his expression became firmer. I was thinking about that on the way here, he said. Getting my phone back, my card. It's not just about recovering property. It's a chance to rebuild properly. No shortcuts. No depending on anyone else. He glanced at her, his voice steady. I want to give you a more stable life. She looked surprised. You don't owe me that. I know, he said immediately. It's not about owing. It's about wanting to. I don't want you to worry every time something unexpected happens. I don't want us to live day by day just hoping nothing goes wrong. Her grip tightened slightly around the cloth bag she was holding. I'm going to expand the work behind the house, he continued. The trellis I'm building, that's just the start. I've been thinking about growing more, maybe even supplying regularly to the market instead of small batches. And with my contacts restored, I can reach out to some people about construction jobs again. He paused, then added more quietly, I can do better. I will. The sincerity in his voice wasn't dramatic. It was simple and grounded, and that made it stronger. Lytudiem felt her throat tighten slightly. I never needed luxury, she said softly. I just need to know we're moving forward. We are, he answered without hesitation. They were almost at the gate of his house now. The sky had shifted to a softer shade of orange, the heat of the day fading. But he admitted even if everything else stabilizes, the situation with my mom will take time. She nodded. Do you think you'll talk to her? Eventually, he said. I have to. Avoiding it won't solve anything. But I need to sort out my own thoughts first. I don't want to speak from anger. That's wise. He gave a faint, tired laugh. I don't feel very wise. You handled the police calmly. You didn't run away from the truth. You didn't let resentment decide for you. That counts. They reached the gate and stopped. The familiar yard lay ahead, quiet and bathed in the last light of the day. The unfinished trellis stood in the corner, wooden posts against the sky, a structure waiting to be completed. Toan looked at it for a long moment. This, he said softly, is what I want to focus on. Building something steady, something that grows slowly, but lasts. Lytudiem followed his gaze. Then we'll build it. He turned to her, surprised by the certainty in her tone. Together, she added. There was no dramatic embrace, no exaggerated promise. Just a shared understanding in the quiet of the evening. Toan reached out and gently took her hand. I can't promise there won't be more problems, he said honestly, especially with my mom. But I promise I won't let things fall apart again. I'll face them. She squeezed his hand lightly. That's enough. The wind moved through the yard, carrying the faint scent of earth and leaves. Somewhere far away, a motorbike passed, its sound fading into the distance. For the first time in days, Toan felt something close to balance. The legal battle was not entirely over. The emotional one with his mother had barely begun. But he had reclaimed something essential, not just his belongings, but his direction. He opened the gate, and they stepped inside. The future was still uncertain. There were conversations he wasn't ready for, yet wounds that needed time. But as the evening settled around them, one thing was clear. He was no longer standing still. And this time, he wasn't walking alone.